For a brief period in World War I, one small German cruiser wreaked havoc on Allied shipping and merchant efforts in the Indian Ocean. That ship, the HMAS Emden, became legendary amongst sailors and civilians alike for both the crew's tenacity and chivalrous conduct in battle. This is the incredible story of the HMAS Emden. The HMAS Emden was a Dresden-class light cruiser in the Imperial German Navy. Named after the small town of Emden in northwest Germany, she was commissioned in 1906 and completed in 1909. With a top speed of 23.5 knots and a displacement of 4,268 tons fully loaded, she was a fast and lightweight ship. As part of the East Asia Squadron, she was based in Tsingtao, China for most of her pre-war days. In 1913, Karl von Müller took command of the Emden. Von Müller was a very well-regarded naval leader, later earning himself the nickname the Gentleman of War. In 1914, with the Great War on the horizon, he prepared his ship and crew for battle. Germany officially declared war on Russia on the 1st of August 1914, and Emden immediately sailed into action, capturing the Russian steamer Ryazan within 3 days. The Ryazan was promptly converted into the German merchant raider HMS Cormoran II. This was the first of many vessels the Emden would capture during the war. On the 5th of August, Vice Admiral Maximilian von Spee ordered von Müller and his crew to join up with the rest of the East Asia Squadron in the Mariana Islands to sail back to Germany by way of South America. However, von Müller suggested that his ship remain behind to raid British shipping vessels in the Indian Ocean. Spee agreed, and the Emden sailed into action as the rest of the squadron headed for South America. Von Müller sailed the Emden to the shipping lanes between Singapore, Colombo and Aden, searching for merchant vessels. Between the 10th and 13th of September 1914, the Emden captured 6 ships, including the Greek ship SS Pontoporos, which was carrying equipment for the British. She also sank 4 other ships, including 2 troop transport ships. Von Müller never intentionally killed merchants or civilians, capturing them and returning them to British ports instead. This chivalry earned him the respect of allies and enemies alike. The rampage in the Bay of Bengal continued through to the end of September as the Emden sank 2 more British ships and captured, then released an Italian freighter. The Italian crew relayed the news to the British, who immediately implemented a shipping blackout and began hunting for the Emden. But von Müller had already left the area with bigger disruption plans in mind. Pressured by the British on his tail, von Müller sailed south toward the port of Madras, a town near the eastern banks of British-controlled India. In a risky naval move, the Emden sought to take out the oil tankers in the port, further debilitating British shipping in the region. During the night of the 22nd of September, the Emden stealthily sailed within 3,000 yards of the 6 Burma Oil Company tankers anchored in the port. Then, the Emden fired nearly 130 rounds in 10 minutes, setting 2 oil tankers on fire and damaging 3 others, along with a merchant ship. In total, the Emden spilled over 1,309,750 litres of enemy fuel. After that, she slipped away before the British could react. Of the attack, von Müller wrote, "I had this shelling in view simply as a demonstration to arouse interest among the Indian population, to disturb British commerce, to diminish English prestige." The Emden continued on her path of destruction, sinking several more ships before heading to Diego Garcia, a British garrison off the coast of Mauritius. News of the war hadn't reached the people of Diego Garcia, and the Emden was allowed to refuel and resupply safely. On the 10th of October, the Emden set sail again. With von Müller's knowledge of shipping routes and a good deal of luck, she captured 6 more ships, including the British steamer Benmore. 4 of these vessels were sunk, including the Benmore, 1 used as a collier, and the last one sent to a British port with captured crews from the 4 other ships. After sinking the Benmore, von Müller led his crew to Penang on the coast of British Malaya for another surprise attack. Disguising the ship and arriving before dawn on the 28th of October, the Emden spotted the Russian cruiser Zhemchuk resting in the port for repairs. Von Müller fired a torpedo on the Russian ship, followed immediately by artillery barrage. The Russians returned fire but scored no hits. Von Müller fired a second torpedo which broke the Jemchug apart, killing 81 Russian sailors and wounding 129. After the Russian ship sank below the surface, von Müller sailed away, then ran into the French destroyer Mücke and sunk her as well. Despite the turmoil the Emden caused, von Müller and his crew earned the reverence of British merchants and sailors alike, even as the British Admiralty struggled to stop the German ship and restore the prestige of the Royal Navy. After the attack on Penang, von Müller decided to go to Direction Island, a small British-controlled island south of Ceylon, now Sri Lanka, in an attempt to destroy the British wireless radio system and draw British ships away from the Indian Ocean. On the 9th of November 1914, von Müller sent Lieutenant Helmut von Mücke to shore with 46 crew members to take out the radio system. Before they could arrive, however, the radio tower sent a distress message to Australian warship HMAS Sydney regarding an unidentified vessel, despite the Emden's attempts to jam radio signals. Soon, the Australian vessel appeared on the horizon. Closing in quickly, the Sydney opened fire on Emden. Not one to give up easily, Müller tried 4 times to get within torpedo range of the Sydney, sustaining heavy fire damage in the process. Eventually, the Emden's guns went silent and the crew took to destroying signal books before surrendering to the Australians. During the quick but fierce battle, the Emden killed 3 of Sydney's crew members and injured a further 13. Conversely, Sydney killed 133 of the Emden's crew, with the rest taken as prisoners of war. The Emden's luck had finally run out. The news of the Emden's demise spread quickly, and while British officials breathed a sigh of relief, many revered von Müller as a commander. According to the Daily Telegraph, it is almost in our hearts to regret that the Emden has been captured and destroyed. We certainly hope that Commander Karl von Müller has not been killed, for, as the phrase goes, he has shown himself an officer and a gentleman. But even as Emden's crew surrendered, the 46 sailors that had gone on shore remained free and in desperate need of escape. Watching the Emden and HMAS Sydney trade blows from Direction Island, Lieutenant von Mücke and his 46 men could see that the Emden would ultimately lose the fight. Von Mücke quickly commandeered another ship, a wooden topsail schooner named Aisha, and ordered her to be prepared for sailing. The ship was in bad shape. The bilge pumps didn't work properly, the seacocks had no seals, and the wooden hull was rotten and leaking. But it was all they had. Despite the Aisha's many issues, the men made their way to Penang, a neutral Dutch city in Indonesia. There, von Mücke received news of German steamers in the area that could provide safe passage back to Europe. The Aisha crew left Penang, and on the 14th of December, they made contact with the Choising. After gaining passage on the Choising and scuttling the Aisha, the men made their way to Yemen. The Choising, disguised as a British merchant ship, sailed a non-traditional route through the Indian Ocean to avoid detection. The men reached the coast of Hodeidah, Yemen, in January the following year. From there, they used small Arab vessels to sail to Jeddah and then finished their journey on land, trekking on foot, donkey and camel to reach a Turkish railhead. They then caught a train to Germany, receiving a hero's welcome at every stop along the way. In von Mücke's words, there were bands playing and flags flying to welcome us and roses which to decorate ourselves. Gifts were showered upon us as we sat in our carriages. The Emden and many of her crew members earned Iron Crosses for their valor during the war, and Germany commissioned a second warship with the name SMS Emden in honor of the original Emden. The rest of the crew, including von Müller, were held as POWs until 1919. The Emden, in her relatively short career, managed to sink or capture a total of 25 ships. While many were recaptured by the British during the war, the Emden delivered 16 ships into the jaws of death. This loss of vessels and cargo amounted to a cost of around £2.2 million, which would be over £200 million today. Her prowess of the Indian Ocean during the early days of the war, combined by von Müller's gentlemanly conduct, made the Emden a fierce adversary and an icon of strength to the Germans. What do you think of von Müller and the Emden? Was it pure luck or skill? We'd love to know your thoughts in the comments section below, and as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you learned something new.